because the whole thing about the Earth and the moon moving. And so that didn't become an issue until there was train travel. Because once you could move between distances fairly quickly, then timetables, and there actually is a great thing on Horrible Histories, and they talk about that, and they're literally trying to sync up these 5 different timetables that they're using. And there's actually, I have another skit where they're talking about, oh, is it a British mile or a French mile or a London mile? I mean, the problem is when you have these plethoras of measurement systems, it gets very confusing. And the one history of measurement book that I have, the guy actually said that one of the other reasons that it really got France to work on it was the fact that there was estimated 250,000 measures within France at the time. And you know, I was talking about cheating with measures earlier. It certainly gets easy to cheat when you don't understand your measurements because there's so many of them. But it actually had another purpose too, which was if every little town in France developed its own measurement system, and imagine, so it's like, how tall is it? Well, it's as tall as Francois' door. And then Francois' door becomes the measurement system for that community, and you know when there's somebody who's trying to sell you something who's not from your community because they don't understand your measures. And I have a contemporary example of that, which I had a girlfriend, and they were in Italy, which of course uses the metric system, and they're on this bus and they're taking this tour and everything. And the woman's going, this is so many kilometers away and this is so many meters high. And her girlfriend got up at the back of this bus and go, could you give that to me in miles and feet? And the woman said, no. She stuck out like a sore thumb because she didn't use the metric system. And here's another thing, not only are we challenging our kids and our teachers by doing 2 different systems, but our kids are also traveling abroad in record numbers. And we're throwing just one more obstacle. In fact, my daughter, who spent a year in Japan, wrote about that. You know, she's got all the language and she's got all the customs, and then she's got to learn a whole new measurement system too. Because unless you're working in the scientific communities, Common Core standards have the kids taught measurements side by side for about 3 or 4 years, and then it doesn't come up in the curriculum again. And until they're in chemistry or doing some other things, they're all, you know, rely on the metric system. But we should really be training our kids in the system that is good for medicine and for science. If you want to become a scientist, you have to learn the metric system. Let's give them a leg up. Let's not make them going into these really high-paying careers harder than it needs to be.
I have a question. We're new in town. I'm assuming there are some scientists here.
Yeah, throw a stick.
Do you scientists use the metric system?
We use both.
The lab is not...
Yeah, the oven's in degrees Celsius, and the pressures in PSI gauge.
Yes.
Usually.
And does it cause problems?
All the time. I have instruments that have Allen bolts on them that are they're intermixed between standard and metric, so you're always rounding off wrenches, or even worse, rounding off the bolts. And it happens all the time because some equipment from the instrument was made in the United States, another little piece was from Italy, another piece was from Spain, one was from Germany, and you get a mismatch of all these different pieces on one box that you're working on. And you can never find the right wrench, and going with the other problem with the imperial system is you have to step up in weird fractions. So if 1/32 is a little too big, or wait, which way is it? A little too small, then you step up to 3/64.
Yeah, I mean, that's a crazy measure.
Unorganized drawer is
that's
a challenge.
That's a millimeter is tiny. And it's interesting because the other thing that happens if you're working in the metric system and you're converting from centimeters to millimeters, you move a decimal point. You move a decimal point. That's all you have to do. And it's interesting, so the last blog that I put up was about the fact, I don't know if you guys have ever seen a movie called, I'm going to blank on it now. This is Spinal Tap. Okay, there is a scene in there where the Linda McCartney type character sketches out this, they're going to have this big Stonehenge set, and she sketches this thing out, and the manager goes and takes it, and he goes to pick it up, and he goes, oh, so it's going to be about this size, the same colors as, she's like, what are you talking about? This is the piece. This is what you asked me to build. And she pulls out the napkin, and Instead of writing down feet with one line, she had put inches with 2 lines. And so they had this set piece that was about this big instead of being, 12 feet tall. And another example is I had a coworker. He wanted to have something fabricated that was 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch by 1/2 foot. And what he got was a cube. Okay, a cube, because that 1/2 foot was read as a 1/2 inch. And so those are, when you're mixing these sorts of things, those are the kind of errors. And that's from the woman in my next office. Imagine how many other examples there are out there.
One example is the question, which is heavier, a pound of gold or a pound of feathers?
Well, it's interesting because the whole anti-French thing that comes up is the ounce that we use in the kitchen is actually the avoirdupois ounce, which if that doesn't sound French, I don't know what does.
One thing I learned living in Japan is that it is so easy to switch over if you have total immersion.
Yes, and that's why I'm saying, don't convert. Don't convert. Don't only convert when you absolutely have to, and in 6 months, it'll be nothing. It will be nothing. Just convert the things that you have to convert. And now, with cookbooks, and there's so many Kindle things, how tough is it going to be to just switch all those electronic cookbooks over into just metric units?
A lot of design programs, you just make the switch, and the drawings will immediately shift to millimeters, inches, whatever you like.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you have to go to a machine shop, and those lathes have inches.
Yeah.
And you can't do much about it.
Now, my understanding is that one of the pushbacks in the 70s was from the grocery stores, that they did not want people coming in and going, I can't buy meat by the kilogram. What the heck is a kilogram? So what I like to tell people is, if you know what a yard is, the difference between a yard and a meter is only 3 inches. So if you can imagine a yard, you can imagine a meter. You probably already have kilometers per hour on your in your car, okay? And a 1/2 pound or a 1/2 kilogram is roughly a pound. I mean, if you're making hamburgers and you order 1/2 kilogram of ground beef, you're going to be able to manage through. To me, the toughest thing was a Celsius. And there's actually, and I'm sorry, you guys heard this before, there actually is a memnotic device for that, which is 30 is hot, 20 is pleasing, 10 is cold, and 0 is freezing. And anytime you see a negative number, it's freezing. It's not that, it's 18 degrees. No, it's freezing. It's 31 degrees. No, it's not freezing. Or it is freezing. So I mean, it's just, we're just made things so difficult for ourselves. And it's interesting because one of the reasons you have these metric-only rulers, and if you just start thinking and working in these new units, so if I need a table that's a certain size, guess what? I measure it with my metric thing, and then when I go out, that's what I use. So like I said, conversion seemed to really be a problem because they were just teaching these people all these conversion factors, and that did really seem to bog people down. Just start using the other side of the ruler. Just start using the other side of the ruler. And if I can do it with a lot of the stuff that I can do, I'm not saying there wouldn't take some effort, and I'm not saying there wouldn't be some expense, but it's not getting cheaper the longer we wait. And we're losing our time, we're stumbling our kids, and people are dying. And like I said, we literally don't even need new legislation. Congress can set weights and measures. It's within their power to do so. Now, I won't go into this Congress, but just in general. Just in general.
So, Linda, at the museum, when you are doing something, do you try and just use metric?
So I actually have like some balance scales. The kids love playing with the balance scales. Yeah. And so those are all in grams. And then I've got bottles and cups, and of course they've got the metric units on one side, and they've got, so yeah, that's what I really talk about. And really, the kids are playing with the stuff, but the point I'm trying to make is with the teachers. So actually, I will tell you that I found out this morning I'm going to be able to do something for National Metric Week, which is the week in which 1010 falls. Okay?
Nice.
And that is actually sponsored by the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics. Guess what? They think we should convert to the metric system. You know, the science associations, actually the U.S. Metric Association grew. They just had their 100th birthday last year. And they were actually a side project that came out of AAAS, the American Association for the Advancement of Science. I mean, metric system is science-based. Like I said, these are a collection, this is a system. And like I said, and this is only the volumetric measures. There's an even more complicated one for distances. Because we've got inches and feet and yards and furlongs and lengths, and hands on horses, and it's crazy. It's just crazy what we've done to ourselves. So, I actually do have some cards here for my blog. Like I said, I've now hit the 240,000 page view. I am being archived by the Library of Congress. And I am working on my book, which is going to take some time, because I work full time. And occasionally I like to have a life.
I'm looking at this ruler.
Yes.
And it has this metric unit called the hectare. What is that?
So they use that for like land and stuff. That's a replacement of an acre.
How many square meters, how many square kilometers? I mean, this is not metric.
Well, that was supplied to me by the metric coordinator for the U. If you want to write to Elizabeth Gentry, I will give you her card. And actually, it's really interesting because the whole idea of for real estate for acres, there was a point in time where there were no such things as acres because you sold and bought land based on how productive it was. So so if land was really productive, you were really looking for what size of a piece of land could support a family of 4, and that's what you bought. So if it was not very productive, you needed a big piece. And that concept really grew out of when England started to sell off their land so that they could raise money.
It's still in use in Guatemala. They often use manzanas, apples, to describe areas of land. I can't remember what the version is.
Yeah.
But it's an arbitrary unit, based on food production.
Yeah. I mean, it really is an interesting history. And the the last vestiges that I found of the people who were really pushing back, and it takes a lot fewer people to stop something than it does to start something. And so there was this one organization that was very active. And literally their only purpose was to stop metric system adoption. It's the only reason that they lived. And I think I found the last traces of them back in about 1982 when they came out with a book called Metric Madness. And although there is a guy who has commented on my blog several times, and his organization is called something for customary weights and measures. So it's just really about holding on to what we have. It's so important that we hold on to what we have. And you've Googled something.
I did. 1 hectare is 10,000 square meters.
Okay.
That's what it says here.
Where?
Yeah.
You mentioned making a movie earlier, right?
Yeah.
Put it on YouTube.
Well,
I'll watch it.
Well, here's the thing is I was looking at a budget of about $300,000. So that might be a little...
YouTube's free. The production is all you really have to pay for.
And that's it. That's what's nice about this is, 20 years ago, unless I sold it to a Discovery Channel or national, I couldn't do it. Now the distribution is out there. But yeah, I actually am a filmmaker. That was my background, and
You
so
can get paid from your YouTube channel. If you had episodes and things on it, that could actually make you some money.
You
Well-
become a YouTube star.
well,
Yeah.
when I don't have a full-time job. So, yeah, but thank you. I mean, that's that, and I've thought about maybe doing some sequences and, like, for instance, showing people how much easier it is to work with in the kitchen. But I want it to be really catchy, and that's going to take a lot of creativity. Come up with something that could theoretically go viral.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, this makes sense, the whole metric thing. And it seems like the whole world and the economy is really going to eventually force us into kind of thing. What is the biggest blocking, or what's stopping us from making that transition? What's your,
So it's lack of knowledge. It's literally lack of awareness that we haven't realized how badly we've painted ourselves into a corner. And it's funny because after I talk to people, then I start getting comments from people constantly going, I saw this thing, and oh, you know what, whatever. I once had a conversation with somebody, and I said, and there's all this dual labeling, and they grabbed the closest thing to them and said, no, there isn't, and then they looked at it and realized that there were. And the problem with having both units exist side by side, I mean, almost anything you go and pick up in the grocery store has grams and milliliters on it, but we don't use them. We don't even see them. This comes to our attention when we leave the country and we're suddenly confronted with all these units that we don't understand, or in some other ways. In fact, one of the weird things we have is nutritional labeling. It's all in grams. But if you look at the serving size, it's this many grams of protein, this many grams of carbohydrate, and it's a serving size is 2/3 of a cup.
I think it's cost. That machine shop down on D.P. Road, we have to convert all their machine tools, their lathes, their milling machines, unless they're already digitized, and then it's a matter of filling them up.
Yeah, and I'm saying that we could figure out how to do this as efficient. Yes, there is. But how much is the cost of what's a human life worth?
Well,
What's a year and a half of our time
worth?
worth?
The lab, and they're both talking English units. It doesn't make any sense. The lab has to make the change first.
Well,
That's the big enchilada here.
interestingly enough, the federal government was required to go to the metric system where it made sense to do so. And it was just, inertia is very easy. Inertia is very easy. And that's why I say we need to make a conscious decision about whether or not the trajectory that we're on is the trajectory we want to stay on, rather than just doing what we're doing the way we've always done it, with complete, incomprehension that we've painted ourselves into this corner. And by the way, I do have to thank NIST, so the National Institute for Standards and Technology. They're the keepers of the metric system. They're the ones who supplied me with the rulers, and they can't advocate for themselves because they're a government entity. But I can. So the other thing that's really interesting is they're actually working on a scientifically derived kilogram. So I told you, if you've got a laser and the right measuring equipment, anybody can come, say this is a meter. There actually is a physical standard for the kilogram, and it exists in the basement of the International Bureau of Standards. If anything happened to that kilogram, the kilogram for the rest of the world would have to change.
and actually, I think it is decaying to some extent. I think it is decaying.
So every few years, so there's like 10 of these standards out around the world, and every few years they bring them together, because whatever that one weighs in the basement, they have to calibrate all of the other ones to that. And there actually is a very precise cleaning process that they have to go through. Because, if they take any of that material off of there, they may have reduced the kilogram by a 1/2 gram or 1/4 gram or what. So it's kind of crazy that we still have this physical standard. I actually came across at one point a video that said that Germany was told, do not bomb the International Bureau of Standards, because if you do that, you will destroy the measurement system for the entire world. But they are working on a scientifically derived one, and they're very close. They're very close to doing that. They're actually doing 2 different methods. And there's actually a whole book about that too, called World in Balance. So
why do we have a compass of 360 degrees and not 100 degrees?
I think it goes back to the watch thing. I mean, there probably were attempts to do that. The compass issue, I have not specifically researched that.
Well, the only thing I can think of is that you can divide 360 by everything but 7. So that makes it pretty easy.
Well, it's interesting, because one of the counter arguments to the metric system has been, but you can divide a foot by 1, 6, 3, 2, and 4. But you can only divide a metric unit by 5, 2, and 1. No, seriously, that has been a counter argument. Because you can divide a foot by so many different ways.
People don't like decimals.
I love decimals. You give me a decimal versus a fraction with an uncommon denominator, I will take. And the interesting thing is, so Wall Street, remember they used to do 5 7/8 and all that? Even they converted to decimalized back in '92. They haven't used a fraction since 1992. So it can be done.
What was the name of the book you said, The Measure of?
The measure of all things.
Thank you.
Ken Alder, I've actually spoken to him on the phone. What else do I have that's interesting? So this is actually interesting. This gentleman died not too long ago, called Measuring America. It was very interesting because there's a distance that's used for measuring land called a chain. And he thinks that one of the reasons that because like I said, Thomas Jefferson was trying to help us to convert over, but we were acquiring so much land that it was more efficient to just use the chain, which is what we had used previously. Well, I sense people are starting to drift off. so I'm going to stop. So I have my card up here for my blog. I actually have more than 100 people get a notice every time I put up a blog post. And I actually will write about this experience and bring up the compass question. Because I've researched the time. I have not come across the compass that I can remember, but I've looked at so much material over 5 years. So thank you guys very much for coming.